In the farthest corner of Camp Pendleton, 2 miles down a dirt road that nobody took unless they had to, there was a building that most Marines pretended didn't exist. Ammunition Storage Facility 7 Alpha. And every night, at the same hour, in the same spot, an old man sat in a folding chair outside its gate. No flashlight, no weapon, just a faded security uniform and a stillness that made young Marines look away when they passed. Nobody knew his name. Nobody asked why he was there. But everyone knew he never missed a shift. 10 years, maybe longer, sitting in the dark, watching nothing, waiting for something no one else could see. Camp Pendleton stretched across 125,000 acres of Southern California coastline, north of San Diego, east of the Pacific. Thousands of active personnel moved through its gates every day. Training grounds, helicopter pads, motor pools, barracks, mess halls, ammunition depots. The place never slept. Convoys rolled through at all hours. Young Marines jogged information before dawn. It was a machine, always running, always grinding. But in the northeast sector, past the main roads and the busy buildings, there was a quieter place. A place where the noise faded and the dust settled, and the only sound was the wind coming off the hills. That was where Facility 7 Alpha sat, surrounded by chain-link fencing topped with razor wire, marked with faded warning signs that nobody bothered to read anymore. The old man arrived every evening at 2000 hours, 30 minutes before sunset. He drove an old Toyota pickup, tan with rust spots along the wheel wells, and parked it in the same spot every time, 20 meters back from the fence. Then he walked. Not slow, not fast, just steady, controlled. There was something military in the way he moved, though he wore no uniform, carried no rank. His shoulders weren't slumped, but they weren't stiff either. His head was slightly bowed, but his eyes were always forward. He wore the same thing every night. A faded blue security shirt, untucked. Black cargo pants worn at the knees. Brown leather boots that had seen better decades. A whistle in his left pocket. A small notebook in his right. A flashlight clipped to his belt that nobody had ever seen him turn on. His chair sat on a concrete pad across from the main gate. A metal folding chair, the kind sold at hardware stores for $12. It had rust along the joints and a slight lean to the left. He would unfold it, sit down, and then he would simply look. At the fence. At the darkness beyond. At the distant glow of the barracks 2 miles south. He never spoke. Never moved. At 0500, 10 minutes before sunrise, he would stand. Fold the chair. Walk back to his truck. Drive away. No duty log. No incident report. No handoff to a morning shift. The security office had no record of assigning him there. But he had been there longer than most of the officers who ran the office. The young Marines had given him names over the years. Some called him Ghost. Some called him the Old Man. A group of lance corporals once joked about the haunted ammo dump. But the jokes never lasted long. Because one night, one of those lance corporals walked past the facility alone, and the old man turned his head. Just slightly. Just enough for the young Marine to see his eyes. And whatever was in those eyes made the lance corporal stop talking about ghosts forever. He never said what he saw. He just said he didn't want to see it again. Rumors spread through the barracks. Some said the old man was a Vietnam veteran. Some said Korea. Some said he was a former operator, special forces, someone who had done things that never made it into official records. But no one knew for certain. And no one asked. Because asking meant getting close. And getting close meant looking into those eyes. All anyone knew was that every night, without fail, the old man was there. Sitting in the dark, watching, waiting. That Friday night in late October, the air was colder than usual. A marine layer had rolled in from the Pacific, settling low over the hills, turning the base into a gray maze of fog and shadow. The chain-link fence around Facility 7 Alpha glistened with moisture. In the distance, music thumped from the barracks area. Weekend liberty had begun, just after 0100. 4 figures appeared on the dirt road, leading to the facility. Young, early 20s, Marines, off-duty, drunk. They stumbled more than walked. Passing a bottle between them, their laughter too loud for the hour. One of them was talking big, the way young men did when they had too much alcohol and not enough sense. He was pointing toward the facility, toward the old man sitting in his chair. The old man saw them coming. He didn't move, didn't shift. His eyes tracked them through the fog, 4 silhouettes weaving toward trouble. He had seen this before. Young men with too much pride and too little experience. They stopped at the fence. One of them rattled the chain link, testing it. Another laughed and said something crude. The one who had been talking big stepped forward, looking at the old man with the kind of contempt that only comes from ignorance. The old man stood. Slowly, no urgency, no threat. He just rose from his chair and walked toward them. Steady, controlled, the same way he did everything. The loud one didn't back down. He stepped closer to the fence, close enough that his breath fogged against the cold metal. He said something about the old man's age. Something about going home. Something about nursing homes. The old man didn't respond. He just stood there on the other side of the gate, hands at his sides, eyes fixed on the young Marine's face. Then the loud one made a mistake. He reached through the gap in the fence and shoved the old man's chest. Just a push. Just enough to prove something to his friends. What happened next took less than 2 seconds. The old man's hand moved faster than anyone could track. He caught the young Marine's wrist, twisted it slightly, and pulled. The loud one came off his feet, slammed through the gap in the gate, and landed flat on his back on the concrete. The air left his lungs in a single gasp. His eyes went wide, staring up at the stars, his wrist still locked in the old man's grip. Not painful, just immobilized, controlled. The other 3 froze. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The fog swirled around them, and somewhere in the distance, the barracks music had stopped. The old man released the wrist, stepped back, returned to his original position, hands at his sides, eyes forward. He hadn't said a word, hadn't changed his breathing, hadn't broken a sweat. The 4 young Marines ran. They didn't look back. They didn't stop until they reached the barracks. The old man returned to his chair, sat down, resumed watching the darkness, as if nothing had happened. At 0630 the next morning, a black SUV rolled down the dirt road toward Facility 7 Alpha. No markings on the doors. Government plates. The kind of vehicle that made enlisted personnel stand a little straighter. The man who stepped out was in his early 50s, with close-cropped gray hair and steel blue eyes that had seen more than most men could imagine. A brigadier general. 1 star on his collar. 4 rows of ribbons on his chest. The patch on his right shoulder marked him as the commanding officer of the 1st Marine Division. Behind him, a lieutenant colonel and 2 senior enlisted Marines followed at a respectful distance. None of them spoke. All of them looked tense. The general walked directly toward the old man, who was still sitting in his chair, still watching the gate. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the fog in shades of orange and gold. The general didn't slow down, didn't hesitate. The old man saw him coming. He didn't stand, didn't acknowledge the rank, just waited, the way he always did. The general stopped directly in front of him. For a long moment, neither man moved. The officers behind the general exchanged confused glances. Then the general did something that made all of them freeze. He snapped to attention. A crisp, perfect salute. A brigadier general saluting a civilian security guard. The lieutenant colonel nearly spoke. But a sharp look from the general silenced him. The senior enlisted Marine stared, not understanding what they were seeing. The general held the salute for a full 3 seconds. Then he lowered his hand, reached into his jacket, and pulled out a folder, old, worn at the edges. A faded classification stamp across the front. He opened it and removed a photograph. The image was 20 years old. Iraq, Fallujah, November 2004. The Second Battle of Fallujah. One of the bloodiest urban combat operations since Vietnam. The photograph showed 2 men in the middle of hell. One was young, barely into his 20s, his face covered in blood and dust, his eyes half closed, his body limp. A bullet wound in his shoulder, another in his leg. The other man was carrying him. Fireman's carry, textbook perfect, moving through smoke and rubble while a building collapsed in the background. The man doing the carrying wasn't young, but he wasn't old either, mid-30s. His face was set in concentration, his jaw clenched. His eyes locked on something beyond the frame. The general held the photograph out to the old man. The old man looked at it. His expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Something deep. Something heavy. The general spoke. His voice was low, steady, but there was a weight in it that came from years of carrying something he couldn't put down. He told the old man that he took 6 rounds that day, that 3 of them were still inside him, that he carried the general 700 meters under fire, through streets filled with insurgents, past burning vehicles, all the way to the extraction point, that the general had been unconscious the whole time, that he never saw the man who saved his life. He told the old man that he had read the after-action reports, listened to the witness statements, learned that the old man had pulled 14 people out of that building. 6 were already dead. 8 survived. The general was the 8th. He told the old man that they had offered him a medal. He refused. They offered him a promotion. He refused. They offered him a pension, a ceremony, everything. He refused it all. And then one day, he simply disappeared. His file was closed. For 20 years, the general had been looking for him. The general's voice caught for just a moment. He told the old man that he had heard what happened the night before, that the 4 young Marines had described the man who stopped them, and the general had known instantly who it was. The old man finally moved. He stood from his chair, slowly, deliberately, and looked directly into the general's eyes. For the first time. For the only time. And he spoke a single word. Lieutenant. The general lowered his head. His eyes were wet, but no tears fell. His voice was barely a whisper. He said he wasn't a lieutenant anymore, but he was still alive, still serving, still standing. Because of the man in front of him. The old man didn't respond. His gaze shifted to the general's shoulder, to the small scar visible just above his collar, the place where the bullet had entered 2 decades ago. The general stepped back, saluted again. Longer this time, slower. Then he turned and walked back to his vehicle. He didn't look back until he reached the door. The old man had already returned to his chair. But he wasn't looking at the darkness anymore. He was looking at the horizon, at the sun rising over the hills. In the weeks that followed, something changed at Camp Pendleton. There was no official announcement, no memo from command. But word traveled the way it always did in the military, through whispers in the mess hall, through quiet conversations in the motor pool. The young Marines stopped calling him Ghost. They started calling him something else. The Sentinel. And when they said it with respect. A week after the general's visit, a small brass plaque appeared on the post beside the facility gate. No name on it, no date. Just a single sentence. So that others may sleep, someone must remain awake. Nobody knew who had ordered it installed. It wasn't in any official record. But everyone knew it was for him. The old man never looked at the plaque. Maybe he noticed it. Maybe he didn't. It didn't matter. Because he wasn't there for recognition. He wasn't there for gratitude. He was there for something else. Something that only he understood. In Fallujah, 8 men had survived because of him. But 6 had not. 6 Marines had died in that building before he could reach them. And for 20 years, every single night, he had kept their watch. He had stayed awake so that their memory could rest. Months passed. Seasons turned. Marines came and went. Training cycles completed. Units deployed. But at Facility 7 Alpha, every night, at the same hour, in the same chair, the same man sat watching. One night, a young Marine on his final evening before deployment walked past the facility alone. It was nearly dawn. The base was quiet. Just the 2 of them awake in the whole world, or so it seemed. The young Marine stopped. He looked at the old man. He wanted to ask something. Wanted to say something. But the words wouldn't come. The old man turned his head. Slowly, for the first time. He looked directly at the young Marine. Into his eyes. And then he did something he had never done before. He nodded. Just slightly. Just once. A fraction of an inch. But it was enough. The young Marine understood. A message without words. One day, you will stand watch too. Be ready. The young Marine swallowed. Saluted. The old man didn't return it. He couldn't. He was a civilian now. But his eyes said everything his hands could not. The young Marine turned and walked away. He never looked back, but he never forgot that night. And years later, when he was an old man himself, he found his own post. His own chair. His own darkness to watch. Not at an ammo dump. Somewhere else. But it was the same watch. The same duty. The same unbroken chain. In the farthest corner of Camp Pendleton, past the roads and the buildings and the noise of 10,000 Marines, there is a facility that most people have forgotten. And in front of that facility, every night, there's a shadow. An old man. No weapon, no flashlight, no company, but he is not alone. He has never been alone. And as long as men like him exist, neither will we.